You've ever liked a woman and felt ashamed to admit it to your friends? Not because she was a bad person, not because the relationship was wrong, but simply because she was plus size? The answer is yes, you're not alone. And today we're going to talk about this with the seriousness the subject deserves, because behind that silence there is real psychological pressure, one that hurts men and hurts women, and that needs to be named. First thing psychology tells us is that social judgment has deep roots. From childhood, human beings learn what is acceptable through repetition. The media shows a standard. Friends repeat that standard. Family reinforces that standard. And when someone deviates from it, the automatic reaction of those around them is estrangement. Not because it's wrong, but because it's different from what was programmed as normal. This has a name in psychology: social conditioning. And it is so powerful that it makes men deny their own attraction out of fear of other people's opinions. Think about it. A man who feels attracted to a plus-size woman often doesn't speak about it openly. He feels the interest, feels the connection, feels the genuine attraction, but when it comes to admitting it, a block appears. Why? 'Cause he was taught he would be judged, that his friends would mock him, that he would be seen as desperate or having no options. And so he suppresses a real feeling because of social approval that, deep down, is worth nothing. This is what psychology calls conformity anxiety. The fear of being excluded from the group for not following unwritten rules. And this fear is primitive. It comes from a time when being excluded from the group meant death. The brain still carries this mechanism. That's why social judgment hurts so much and why it has such power over people's choices, including in romantic relationships. But there's another side to this story that needs to be told, and it's her side. Plus-size woman grows up in a world that tells her every single day in 1,000 different ways that she is not enough, that her body is a problem to be solved, that she should take up less space, literally and figuratively. She goes to the movies and doesn't see her body represented as desirable. She opens Instagram and the standards pushed by the algorithm rarely include her. She grows up hearing, "You have such a pretty face," a phrase that sounds like a compliment but is actually a verdict. Your body is the problem. And what does that do to her psychology? Creates a wound that goes far beyond aesthetics. Creates a difficulty in believing she is loved for what she is, and not in spite of what she is. When a man genuinely likes her, she sometimes doubts it. When he disappears, she thinks it was because of her body. When he stays, she waits for the moment he will realize he can find something different. This is the direct result of years of social conditioning. It's not oversensitivity. It's pure psychology. Now let's talk about something few men stop to examine. Where does the standard you follow actually come from? Do you really think human attraction works like a list of technical specifications? That there is one single body type that biologically awakens desire in men? Science says otherwise. Studies in evolutionary psychology show that attractiveness standards vary enormously across cultures and throughout history. In many periods of human history, fuller bodies were the ultimate symbol of beauty, health, and fertility. What changes is not biology. What changes is the cultural context. The thin standard that dominates current Western culture is less than 100 years old. It was built by the fashion, media, and entertainment industries for reasons that have far more to do with control and consumption than with genuine health or beauty. You were taught to desire a standard, and everything that deviates from that standard was framed as a mistake. But real attraction, the kind you feel before thinking about what others will think, doesn't follow that script. It shows up the way it shows up. And when a man begins to suppress the attraction he genuinely feels in order to perform an attraction he thinks he should feel, he enters a cycle of inauthenticity that damages his own mental health and that of the women he gets involved with. There's an important concept here called cognitive dissonance. When what you feel and what you act upon are different things, your brain enters into internal conflict. That conflict generates anxiety, dissatisfaction, a constant sense that something is wrong. Many men live through entire relationships in this state, never understanding where that discomfort comes from. The answer is often found precisely in that gap between what they genuinely desire and what they think they should desire. And the judgment that comes from others? Let's be direct about that. The man who judges you for liking a plus-size woman is projecting onto you an insecurity he cannot face in himself. Judging those who deviate from the standard is a way of reassuring himself that he is following the right rules. Self-preservation disguised as opinion. When you understand that, the judgment loses much of its power over you. Social psychology calls this conformity bias. People tend to punish those who deviate from the group because the existence of that deviation threatens the idea that the group's rules are absolute. If you can be happy and attracted to someone outside the standard, that questions the standard. And questioning the standard generates discomfort in those who have never stopped to think about whether it makes sense. Now the question that truly matters: what are you going to do with all of this? Awareness is the first step. When you understand that much of your judgment about attraction was installed from the outside in, you begin to have the power to question it. I'm not saying you're obligated to be attracted to anyone. Attraction doesn't work that way, and no one owes anyone emotional debt. What I'm saying is that it's well worth honestly investigating what is genuine desire and what is performative desire. What you actually feel versus what you think you should feel. And if you've ever liked a plus-size woman and felt ashamed to admit it, perhaps it's worth asking yourself, what exactly did I lose? What did the judgment of people who may not even be part of my life 5 years from now cost me in terms of real connection, true affection, relationships that could have been meaningful? The plus-size woman you liked had a story, had a way of looking at you, had intelligence, a way of speaking, a sense of humor, a presence. And you may have given all of that up to avoid hearing a friend's joke. That's not social strength. That's a real loss. Psychology teaches us that the healthiest relationships are those built on authenticity. And authenticity begins the moment you stop asking others what you should feel and start trusting what you actually feel. The judgment around attraction to plus-size women says far more about the emotional immaturity of those who judge than about anything related to the woman in question. Speaks to insecurity, to the need for approval, to a worldview that was built to serve an industry, not to serve human happiness. And in the end, the only question that matters is very simple. Do you want to live a life based on what others think you should feel, or do you want to live a life based on what you genuinely feel? The answer to that question is the beginning of a freedom that goes far beyond romantic relationships. It is the beginning of an honest relationship with yourself.